Monica, thanks for coming to join us here. Monica van der Ridden is a medical educationist and is going to be leading a poster session. That means chairing the presentation of lots of posters, and you've got some experiences that you think would be helpful for us.
Yeah, so what I do normally is I make sure I prepare the session at home. I go through the abstracts, I count the abstracts, and I see how many time we have, and then I divide the time between the abstracts, but I make sure I have 5 minutes at the beginning and 5 minutes at the end, just to introduce what we are going to do and to summarize at the end.
So there may be 8 or 10 or 12 posters in a session, so you have to divide your time out carefully.
Yes, yeah, you have.
So once we've got going, what do the poster presenters do next?
So, let me think. If I know exactly how many posters we have, I make sure I'm in time at the poster presentation to meet up with the speakers, and I ask them how they would like to be introduced, and it also gives me an opportunity to see how many poster presenters are missing, and if we are missing a lot, I adjust the time. What I also do then is I make sure I know how I introduce them, and when the audience is coming, the first 5 minutes, I tell them a little bit about the rules. So I tell them how many time we have for presenting the poster, how many time we have for discussing, and I delegate some of the tasks that I have to do. So
Sounds a very good idea.
It is, because my experience is, as a poster chair, if you really want to listen what they are saying, that asks all your attention. So what I do, I ask one of the participants, could you do the timekeeping for me? And I ask all the participants, all the presenters, please go to the poster that's after your poster and make sure you have a question for the next poster in mind. Myself, I have a couple of questions that I always can ask, because sometimes you are distracted as a chair and you don't follow the whole presentation well. But then I have a couple of questions like, what would you change the next time if you do this project? Or I ask them, what was the biggest challenge? Or what would you recommend somebody else that's doing your project? And it's good to have these questions in mind, because it's easy to cover if you don't know.
Yeah, I like the idea of asking the poster presenter to make up questions for the next poster. There's nothing worse, I think, as a presenter, to have no one asking a question of your presentation or of your poster.
And it's also, you force the person that has to ask the question to look close at the poster of the others. And the audience is going to look close too. And that makes the discussion often lively. And the poster presenters really get a little bit more out of it than only, the general questions the audience can ask.
I like your idea about keeping the group involved. I think attention begins to flag a little bit, especially when it's a standing up session for an hour or so, walking around.
Yeah, so what I try to do halfway is then I stop the session and I say, okay, go back to the 7 or 8 posters you have seen now, and just try to memorize for yourself, what did you learn? What did you like? What did you recognize from your own practice? And you give people 2 minutes or 1 minute to think about that, and then you just ask, what's your answer? What do you come up with? What do you like? And that is kind of a nice time to have an overall discussion, and it helps me also because I don't need to summarize all the posters at the end. I can already do it halfway, and which is a little bit easier.
Of course, Amy's conference is an enormous affair, and there are delegates, 3,500 delegates, and probably from 90 more countries. So not everyone speaks English as a first language. Does that create an extra problem for you as a chairperson?
Sometimes it is really difficult to get used to the different accents, and also for the poster presenters it's difficult, especially when English is not their first language. And by making sure you keep the time, it gives a safe feeling for the whole group. Because the presenters know I'm not squeezed in a short amount of time, and also there's somebody watching how things are going. And by making sure you know them, the introduction in the beginning, and doing your timekeeping well, that helps.
You told us what you do at the beginning, which is preparation, and then some tips about how to run the session itself. What about when it's all over? How do you wind it up?
So actually I do repeat the questions that we had halfway, and then I ask people again to reflect on that. That's one thing I do, and that helps going the discussion on. I try to summarize the other 8 posters, or the how many of the second half, and I try to ask the audience, like, what do you think the main important take-home messages are there? And if they come up with totally different take-home messages than I had in mind, I give my point of view too. But in general, if they are really actively engaged, they come up with great points.
I think a good poster chairman, excuse me, a good poster chairman is going to comment on the layout and the design of the poster as well. And this is what makes it different. It's visual rather than a short communication. How to do that nicely?
Yeah, so what we often do is at the end I say, okay, well, we have all looked and we have listened to the content, but now I'm going to ask you to put on another pair of glasses and look at the layout. Now, could you comment on things you really like of layout of some of the posters? Then I go over some of the poster suggestions of don't use more than 250 words. I point out visuals, or we look at color combinations, and I also ask people, what are you going to take home from those visual cues and explanations we just gave? And that's it is nice.
Well, thank you, Monica. I think that's a lot of information, both for the poster chairman and as well as for the people who prepared posters and are presenting them. So thanks very much for all those tips. Monica van der Ridden there from the Netherlands. Thank you.